Hi, I'm Harry, and this is Glenn. We're here from the Burlington County Historical Society and Children's History Center, and we're here at a train station. Can you tell us anything about it?
Yes, this is the North Pemberton station in Pemberton Township, and I have a particular connection with this station, Harry.
Oh, you do?
Yes, my great-great-grandfather was the first station agent here.
Whoa.
When the railroad came to Pemberton in
1863.
You got it. And at this time, in 1863, this was the end of the line of the Burlington and Mount Holly Railroad.
It was?
The railroad it ended right here. And, but it didn't take too long for people to realize what a great advantage a railroad was, with a new market for your agricultural goods and for passenger transportation. So it wasn't too long before the railroad was extended from here all the way up to Hightstown.
Wow.
And at that time, there was a connection between Mount Holly and Burlington, which ran right along Route 541.
Oh, wow.
And so that there was a connection there. And soon after that, there was another branch off down near Birmingham, which ran through South Pemberton, where they had another station, and ran all the way through New Lisbon, Brown's Mills, Whiting's, and all the way to Tom's River eventually. So there were a lot of railroad building in the latter part of the 1800s. And in fact, right here, this station grew, and it had a large railroad yard here with several spurs. That building you see at the end of the platform is a track gang shed where they had a little track car for maintenance. And there was a bunkhouse, there was a freight station over here, and there even was a turntable for turning engines. So it was quite a facility. So it was a really bustling place, and it was a beehive of activity. There were up to 9 trains a day that came through here.
Oh, wow.
And there was one particular time in the history of Pemberton Borough where the railroad was particularly critical in 1894. They noticed in May of 1894, May 16th, there was a little curl of smoke that came up from the middle of Pemberton Borough in a horse shed behind one of the houses. Somebody noticed it, and they called the fire company, but the fire company only had a little hand pumper that was bucket fed, and they couldn't keep control of the fire because it spread very rapidly. They didn't know what to do. And this is 1894. There was no fire hydrants because they didn't have a municipal water system. So what do? You call Mount Holly by telegraph, where they had a steam pumper, and they loaded it on a railroad car along with a horse carriage, and lickety-split, they made it from Mount Holly to Pemberton in 11 minutes.
Wow.
They unloaded at the South Station, ran their hose line up Hanover Street, and they had water on the fire, and from that point, when they arrived, the fire didn't advance any further. But it already had engulfed the Methodist Church and about a dozen other buildings.
Oh, wow.
But they stopped it. But the railroad, the man, Thomas Mulvaney, who was the engineer of that train that just came from Mount Holly, he decided to run back, and he went all the way to Burlington, picked up another pumper from the Mitchell Fire Company, and they made it from Burlington to Pemberton South to this station in 20 minutes.
Wow.
So they unloaded and they put their line in. They drew water from a little stream right over here called Bud Run, and they stopped the fire. So basically the railroad stopped the fire and saved Pemberton Borough. It was a really amazing thing. So soon after that, the railroad continued to grow and it continued to serve the area. But then we had World War I came along. Now, Fort Dix didn't exist then, but they built Camp Dix during World War I.
Oh.
And all of the materials to build Camp Dix came through this station and on up to near Wrightstown, where Fort Dix was situated.
So this train station is really helped, like, Pemberton and New Jersey?
Yeah. In fact, it's a critical junction because there were a lot of other trains that came through here. In fact, some students who were at Pemberton had a small school that served students from other areas, and some students even rode the train to go to class.
Wow.
Can you imagine that every morning, coming in here behind a steam locomotive? That must have been kind of neat. So, so World War I, they built Camp Dix. There were 2 tracks that crossed Hanover Street out here because of the increased war traffic. And after that, in the 20s, the railroads started to diminish some because everybody was building roads and cars were starting to come in and trucks, and there was competition for the railroads. And then the Depression came, and that lessened the economy. However, then World War II came along. World War II, the same thing happened. Camp Dix became Fort Dix.
Oh.
There was a lot of building going on. They expanded Fort Dix. And again, all the materials and a lot of troop trains came through here. In fact, one time during World War II, they moved an entire division of troops from Fort Dix to an embarkation point up near Bayonne.
That's crazy.
And they had 25 trains with empty passenger cars that went through here, up to Fort Dix, picked up their loads, and then came back down and went out the Kincora branch, and then up to the main line in Trenton. And that was done in one day. There were 298 coaches, so passenger coaches that were filled with troops on that one single day. So it was a very, very important part of the area's development. And then after World War II, things kind of diminished even further. And during the 1950s, most railroads in the country started switching from steam locomotives to diesel locomotives because steam locomotives were very, very hard to maintain. Diesel were a lot easier and more economical. But the thing is, there's a funny thing about this line, the Pemberton to Camden line. It became the last stand of several of the Pennsylvania Railroad's very last steam locomotives. And several of them can still be seen at the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania in Strasburg that ran through Pemberton.
Wow.
One of them was engine 460, which has just been beautifully preserved in Strasburg. And that made its last run from here in 1955. And then in 1957, 2 years later, the very last Pennsylvania Railroad steam-powered passenger train left from here. And then in 1959, the very last active Pennsylvania Railroad steam locomotive was trundled through here on its way to retirement. It had been leased to the Union Transportation Company, which ran the line up through Wrightstown. So there's a lot of very important, very last things that happened here. But here we are. So, do you want to sign off?
Yes. Thank you. And this has been another edition to On the Road.